I apologise if I seem to be coughing a bit during this video, but unfortunately I am full of cold, and I'm recording this on Christmas Eve. Yeah. So I have literally just finished watching the and final episode, supposedly, of A Christmas Carol 2019 miniseries by the BBC. And this miniseries has had very, very mixed reception and is a little bit controversial with the way it does things. So, I'm just going to be giving my brief thoughts about this after watching all three episodes. And to put it bluntly, it's interesting, to say the least. Also, this poster here, the promotional image, is kind of misleading. Well, it is misleading, let's put it bluntly. Because in the background, everyone assumes, oh, that's the spirits from Christmas Yet to Come. No, it's not. This spirit does not appear at all in this version of A Christmas Carol. The Ghost of Christmas Future, which I'll talk about more later, but he is very disappointing because he is literally a man in a black coat and a black top hat, but with his mouth stitched shut. But other than that, he's fully visible. You can fully see him. He doesn't have these long, fingernails or anything like that. No, he's just an ordinary man, and my god, is his screen time extremely brief, and he is probably the least threatening spirit out of the three, to be honest. But anyway, my first thoughts on this, to be honest, are this is not really paced very well. For example, episode 1 ends with the coming of the first spirit, or at least you hear it come sort of off screen, and that's where the first episode airs. To put this into perspective, most versions of A Christmas Carol, that are films, generally this would happen at sort of probably the 20-minute mark, maybe the half an hour mark. So, to put it bluntly, that is quite a lot of screen time, and to be honest, this and part 2, the second episode, is just the first spirit. And in fact, a bit of the third episode, about 10, 15 minutes of the third episode, is also the first spirit, making it over an hour of just the first spirit, rather than splitting up the running time more evenly. So, to be quite frank, it's not very good pacing. For example, the first two episodes are very, very slow paced. They are very slow paced. Though they do have the advantage in that we get to know a lot more about all of the other characters. For example, we get to actually see Jacob Marley sort of in purgatory. And to be honest, it's the nicest purgatory depicted, really. Because essentially, he's either just lying in his coffin, occasionally getting pissed on, or he's sitting out in a field in the snow next to a roaring fire. Not in the roaring fire, just next to it. So, to be honest, it doesn't seem that bad. And also, Jacob Marley, all the other versions of Jacob Marley, have had, there's some sort of disfigurement to him. Either his jaw is broken or he's a bit rotted and decayed. Not in this version. There is a bit where Scrooge finds his jaw and tongue and that on the floor, which he then immediately pops back in. And I was just like, oh, Is that it? Why couldn't he just remain without the jaw and that arm for a little bit longer? But no, he just looks perfectly fine for the majority of the running time of this. But then we get to episode 3, and episode 3 is actually really well paced, actually, compared to the other two. It's a lot quicker. The problem is that it feels like it's trying to wrap things up a bit too much. It actually has the opposite problem with episodes 1 and 2, where it just feels like the pace is crawling along. Episode 3 feels like it's going lightning quick. For example, the second spirit, which this time is being changed, rather than it being, the spirit of Christmas presents. Well, sort of is, but now the spirit is of Scrooge's sister. Which I find, frankly, a bit bizarre, really. I mean, why would that be allowed? Why would she be allowed to be, the spirit of Christmas presents? I don't know, really, because shouldn't she not be allowed, since she also, obviously has a personal connection to Scrooge for obvious reasons? But, oh well. It's frankly really weird and odd. And she gets very little screen time in this. That section is about 15-20 minutes in this, final hour-long episode. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future, again, only gets about 15-20 minutes of screen time, and then we've got to literally wrap everything up in the final 10 minutes, which I'll get onto later. And also, something that wasn't really, that got no conclusion to it, was Scrooge's nephew. So we have Scrooge's nephew in episode 1 who comes in and actually has the least amount of screen time out of anyone. He actually has no development whatsoever. Yeah, all the other characters, including Mrs. Cratchit, who actually gets the most amount of development and screen time in terms of, supporting cast. Basically, anyone who isn't Ebenezer Scrooge, she actually gets more than Bob Cratchit in this. Yeah. Bob Cratchit's wife actually gets more screen time than Bob does. So, basically, Tiny Tim's ailments are actually cured in this one before Scrooge is actually visited by the three ghosts. And Scrooge actually pays for it. But the reason is because Mrs. Cratchit goes to go and see Scrooge without her husband knowing, and basically she needs £30 in order to pay for an operation on Tiny Tim's lungs. And the way that it's suggested in episode 2 is that Scrooge wants to see what a person is willing to offer their body up for, or something along those lines, in order to trade their body for, in order to get money. Now, I was wondering, after the episode aired, I was actually having a conversation with my friend about this, wondering, did this mean that, the obvious allegory is, oh, he's going to rape her, but I was wondering, is he going to, or isn't he going to? And I was talking to my dad about it, actually, and he said, oh yeah, he's going to rape her. It's obvious. And actually, in episode 3, he doesn't. Yeah, Mr. Cratchit comes to Scrooge's house, and she slowly starts, taking her clothes off and crying at that as she does. And then she gets to a final point, and then Ebenezer basically just says, right, you can take the money and just go. Because he's gotten the results that he wanted. He knows now that someone is willing to basically do absolutely anything for him if they receive money for it. And that was all part of an experiment. Okay, that's a bit weird, quite frankly. Really weird, to be honest. And it is a bit of a different thing, and then that's just kind of over. And then on to the next part, and it's just. This one really does, though, I will say, this version of A Christmas Carol really does, get you to actually hate Scrooge. In every other version of A Christmas Carol, Scrooge is kind of presented, as basically just like a miserable bastard, quite frankly, He's not a very nice person, but he's not, a malicious person. He's not like anything like that. In this one, though, they show you how he's responsible for deaths of many miners and many of his workers over the years. He's responsible for their deaths for not having proper safety by cutting costs and everything. They show stuff like that. So yeah, and one of the complaints about this is that it's different, and yes, it is. Though I will say it kind of had to be because I, like many people, when saw that the BBC were doing another version of A Christmas Carol, I was just rolling my eyes and thinking, my God, another fucking version. Seriously, we have had enough of these. So yeah, if you are gonna do another version of A Christmas Carol, you can't exactly, just do A Christmas Carol again. So I will give this props in that it is doing something different. It is trying. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, it's going too dark." To be honest, not really. You could go an awful lot darker with this. This is not really that dark. It's pretending like it's trying to be, but it's not. Other than the characters saying "fuck" a few times, and a few deaths here and there. Yeah, it's not really that much darker than any other version of A Christmas Carol, really. And but also, I will talk about also what was I talking about? I lost track. Oh yes, Scrooge's nephew, who turns up and gives him the offer to come have dinner with him and his wife and kids, and obviously Scrooge turns it down, and you're thinking, oh yeah, well he's gonna go and see him at the end. No, no, that doesn't happen. We never see him again. We never see Scrooge's nephew again in any of these episodes afterwards. We get that one brief scene and that's it. Never see him again. And this is why I want to talk about the ending. So, spoilers alert. Although, to be honest, it's A Christmas Carol. I mean, most of you should know the story. And to be honest, I've got to spoil it in order to talk about what differentiates it from other versions. So, the ending to this one is pretty different. So, thanks to the visions that Scrooge sees, thanks to the ghost of Christmas yet to come, he sees that Bob Cratchit is planning to resign on Boxing Day, and it's going to another employer who will pay him an extra 2 shillings a week than what Scrooge is paying him. So they'll basically be able to afford, new skates for Tiny Tim or whatever for Christmas and new things and that actual Christmas presents. Yeah. And also, he also envisions Tiny Tim's death. And the way Tiny Tim dies in this one is different because in previous versions, it was due to his illness. This time, it's not due to his illness, actually. It's due to him falling through the ice because he wanted to go out ice skating, so he went out ice skating on his own without telling anyone, and unfortunately the ice beneath him cracked and he fell through into the ice and later after died. Yeah. And then we get a final scene, with Scrooge seeing his own grave and everything, and this one ends differently, actually. It ends with him actually having a chat with Jacob Marley. Yeah, Jacob Marley is actually in this a fair bit, to be honest. And he basically just has a conversation with Jacob Marley. Jacob Marley saying, "Oh, you know, do you see the errors of your ways and everything, and forgive and see." And he says, "You will change." And Scrooge actually turns round to him and says, "No, he won't change, because if he seeks forgiveness for everything, then he will just go back to his old ways." He knows in himself that, if he gets no punishment and he basically, gets forgiven for everything bad he has done, then he will eventually go back to his old ways. At least that's how he sees it. So instead, he says no, he doesn't want anything to change. The only thing he wants to change is for Tiny Tim not to die. That is the one thing he asks for from the spirits. Not for another chance or anything like that. No, just one thing for Tiny Tim not to die. And then suddenly, it's now Christmas Day. And Scrooge runs out and puts gravel on the ice so that no one will be able to skate on the ice, preventing Tiny Tim from, skating on the ice and falling to his death underwater. He then goes to visit. He then goes to visit. There we go. The Cratchits, and obviously, none of them are happy to see him. But he basically, says to Bob, he doesn't even try. He just says he knows that he wants to leave and he has his blessing, but also he'll give Bob £500 for all his years of service, and he will be closing down the Scrooge and Marley business. So on Boxing Day, he'll be closing that business down forever. And he also tells Tiny Tim to stay at home the following day and not go skating on the ice. Okay, and he also admits to being visited by the three spirits. Yeah, in this version, he actually flat out says in front of the Cratchits that he was visited by three spirits, and obviously they don't believe him. They go, Scrooge, have you been drinking? What's wrong with you? And he says, oh, no. And then just, leaves. The final time we see Scrooge is him just walking off, in a crowd. That's the final time we see him. Maybe he went to his nephews afterwards? Don't know. We don't know, but that is the final time we see Scrooge in this. Again, it's a massive mad rush at the end in this final 10 minutes. And it is revealed that Mrs. Cratchit was the one who requested the three spirits to see Scrooge. Or at least that's heavily hinted at. But the series then ends with Mrs. Cratchit saying that there's still a lot more work to be done. And there's me just sitting there thinking, is this hinting at a second series? Is this hinting at a second series? Or something? Because maybe there is a possibility, I don't know, but maybe that was hinting at that, or maybe I was just looking at it too much and it just wanted to be an ambiguous ending for the sake of having an ambiguous ending to it. A lot of these scenes in this, 3-part miniseries seem like they're trying to be more clever, more artsy-fartsy than they actually are, to be honest. I don't know, it just seems like we spend so much time on certain things but no time on the other. For example, there's no Fezziwig in this. Yeah, there's no Fezziwig whatsoever in this. There's only a very brief scene which lasts, just over a minute or so of Scrooge's first love. Yeah, surprisingly, a lot of stuff from A Christmas Carol was actually cut in this version. For example, obviously we never see the ghost, of Christmas Present, who is Scrooge's sister in this version, never shows him, his nephew on Christmas Day at the party when they play charades and on Christmas Day. That's never shown in this one. It's kind of forgotten about. So I'm just wondering, are those things that were cut from this version, is that for a second series? I don't know if that is the case, or if it is, just a one-off mini-series. It's a bit of a weird one, and it's a bit, to be honest, this thing is a bit all over the place. I do appreciate it for trying something different, and, trying to be a much, a slower paced one to try and go in depth with characters. That's, we don't normally get a lot with. For example, we get Jacob Marley gets some screen time in this. Although, to be honest, we don't really get much of how bad he is. He just seems like someone just, knows he did wrong, etc., etc. Yeah. It is a bit of a shame because it would have been nicer to have a bit where him and Scrooge are actually alive. We do get one scene of that in episode 2 where we do get to see a Jacob Marley, be ruthless. But that's the one and only bit we get of it, to be honest. To be honest, and as an improvement, I would say with this mini-series is that you could still make it 3 hours long. I will say, I was tempted to say, oh yeah, just cut it down to 2, hour-long episodes and Bob's Your Uncle. But to be honest, I think if the first Ghost, had have had it, if we'd have had the first Ghost in episode 1, maybe about half of episode 1, or the last 15 minutes of episode 1, and then the first half hour of episode 2, or something like that, and then the second Ghost, the Ghost of Christmas Present, for the second half of episode 1, and the very start of episode 2, and then Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come after that, and then the ending, then I think it would have been much better paced than it has been, to be honest, because some scenes do just drag on and on. For example, in episode 1 particularly, when Scrooge is in his office and you hear him, just be annoyed by the sounds of kids cheering and people being merry outside, which just irritates him. That scene would have been fine if it didn't go on for fucking ever. It just goes on and on and on, and just feels utterly pointless in the grand scheme of things because it doesn't go anywhere with it, to be honest. It shows that Scrooge gets annoyed by people's merriness and loud noises and that outside his office, but yeah, we got that kind of immediately. It just goes on and on for no apparent reason, really, just to fill time more than anything else. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to judge that. You can't really judge this on its own. I know people will say that's unfair, but the thing is, there are that many versions of A Christmas Carol. Of course, people are going to compare it to other versions. So having versions of A Christmas Carol for, well, since the 30s, 40s, I think. Maybe even earlier, to be honest. And it's not going to stop by the looks of things. Personally, my favourite version of A Christmas Carol is the George E. Scott version from 1986, 87, 88, one of those years. That is personally my favourite version of A Christmas Carol. And yeah, this one just unfortunately does not compare in the slightest to it, unfortunately. I mean, it was engaging enough to keep me watching. I did watch, the entire thing. It didn't get me at a point to go switch off. Though and episode 3 is probably the best episodes, simply because, it's not just sitting around and moping around for a bit, it actually has stuff happening in it. I will say bits of episode 1 and a lot of episode 2 I did get bored at times during it because it just dragged things on for far too long, to be honest. So yeah, that's that version of A Christmas Carol, the 2019 BBC version. Let me know what you think of it, if you watched it, if you thought it was good or bad. I'm just going to say, for me, it was an interesting watch, though. I enjoyed it enough. It's one of those things. I enjoyed it enough to keep watching, but it's not going to be one of those things I'm going to rewatch, to be honest. I mean, there are countless other versions of A Christmas Carol to watch, but this is not one I'm going to be clambering to going, sit down and watch again, quite frankly. Maybe if they do a re-edit of it and edit it down to make the pacing a lot better. Or maybe if it does actually get a second series, if that line at the end was a tease for a second series or something, then I'd probably watch that. But anyway, that is it for this review, and soon at midnight I'll be recording me unwrapping my Christmas presents and stocking. So stay tuned for that. That'll probably not go up on Christmas Day for several reasons. One, I'm staying at my granny's where I don't have internet access. I've only got my 4G at the minute. And two is, since I'm filming it in 4K, it's going to take a while to upload as well. So yeah, anyway, until then, if I don't say that, then I say a Merry Christmas to you all and a Happy New Year.